You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and this next conversation is exactly the fuel we need after the last block of the show. Dr. Kerry Mitchell-Brown, executive leadership strategist, host of the Revolutionary Leadership podcast, and author of the forthcoming Revolutionary Leadership, a Power Playbook for Black Women. Dr. Brown, welcome to A More Perfect Union.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here, and I'm sure so many of our leaders, learners, and listeners are going to enjoy what you have to say. Your book, it doesn't ask if Black women are ready to lead. It actually insists that Black women have always led. Where does that instinct to seek permission even come from? And how do we unlearn that?
Oh my God. Yes. We are not waiting to be validated. We are the validators. And oftentimes there are things that, force us to forget that or ask us to rethink it. The leadership that Black women have built inside of systems that never designed for us. I mean, it's powerful. It's not one strategy. It's a whole tradition on how we lead and have led for generations.
Yeah. And talk to us about, your origin story. What made you set your sights, on wanting to learn more about the revolutionary leadership of Black women, in an effort to, not just develop this book, this power playbook, but to develop, your podcast and to serve in executive leadership roles? What was it about the revolutionary leadership of Black women that made you want to make that your focus of expertise?
Well, I mean, I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, right where Malcolm X and, just so many other people. And it was this core, Warren Buffett. So Malcolm X and Warren Buffett, imagine that.
Whoa.
Right. Those are your two leaders. On one hand, it says that anything is possible. And another hand, it's like you're going to have to fight for it if you want it. Right. And so, I mean, I had this desire to be in the C-suite from earlier on high school. Warren Buffett was our mentor for our Future Business Leader of America's program. Right. And so when you have these aspirations, but then when you're confronted with, oh, this is not for you. I mean, it creates a curiosity and a desire for investigation. There was a time where I was in the back of a conference room and consultants were in selling care and community as future leadership. And I'm like, what? I've watched Black women lead this way my entire life. And, people were writing it down as if this was something new. So I was really interested in, what was underneath all of that.
I mean, I think that's incredible. And I think so many of our leaders, learners, and listeners can relate to that. So many different aspects of Black traditions, whether you're talking about faith traditions, or, just the way in which we've seen brothers and sisters lead in our communities over the years. And it's always so interesting when McKinsey comes out with a study, or, you hear some big university that, puts a name to it, puts a brand to it. And we're made to think that it's something different than what we have grown up witnessing ourselves.
What we've always known, what was always in our core. So there's this thing about, if you can't see it, you can't be it. But we saw it. And then people were trying to reinforce that's not what we say. And I was like, should I believe you or my lying eyes? Right. And so we know that it's there. We have never just navigated the system. We were rebuilding it every single time. We were the path maker. And moving, we were not just surviving, we were striving, thriving in broken systems. And so that's, just the premise of my research, the premise of my work, and just wanting to have a public conversation about it, wanted to write it down so others have it to follow.
Yeah. There's so much power in giving it the opportunity to live on the page and in real life. To live outside of our minds. Talk to us about, what does leadership actually look like when it starts at a kitchen table, or when it starts in a church basement, versus how corporate America defines it in the boardroom?
Yeah, I mean, so this is very interesting. Let's think about Harriet Tubman. for example, a commander, not a caretaker. And we kept inheriting our geniuses with the strategic sands off. So, I'll pull back. Harriet Tubman, we inherited her as gentle, as a woman who quietly led folks to freedom. If we turn the lens, she ran intelligence. She read terrain, weather, patrol, and timed everything against people hunting for her for money. I mean, they were hunting her down, right? So 19 missions in a hostile territory. Everyone is home, right? And if we connect her now, every woman who built a back channel, every woman who built a network, a way into the front door was locked. And we're still running the same play. But we don't think about it like that. We don't lift it up as leadership, as genius. And so that's what has me really excited to just reimagine the things that we have been told and just sort of claim it back. It's and document it and what's repeatable. Let's do it.
I mean, speaking of claiming it, you talk about owning your narrative instead of waiting on institutional validation. I mean, that's really a strong through line in your book. What does that look like in practice for women that are climbing the ladder right now today?
Well, I would say what it looks like in practice is, thinking about the things that are broken, right? Again, not just surviving, not just climbing, just rebuilding a new road through it. And so doors won't open. We've experienced that time and time again. She knocks and, cuts away at a new door, right? So maybe it's not a door, maybe it's a window, but then leaves it open behind her, right? And so that's really the center of the book. And a woman is shut out of golf games, starts breakfast, and opens it up to everyone, not just the people at the top, not just the people that, she knows. And years later, the company, she saves the company and she's a VP, right? We don't hear about those stories, right? We hear about how hard it is for Black women, and it is hard, but it's hard because we're thriving, right? And the goalpost continues to move. So that has me pumped just to, just to hold that analysis and, help to chart a new way.
Yeah. I mean, I think your research, this book is really hitting at a time where, we're seeing a lot of people have to really sort of dig into their imagination.
Yes.
Really having to pivot, really feeling shut out of industry altogether, and having to create that business, in order to continue to grow professionally, in order to take care of their families. For the purpose of your research, have you talked to women, who are in that space? I understand folks who are navigating corporate America, but for, the Black women entrepreneurs out there that weren't planning the pivot, but as a matter of survival, have to.
Yes.
Talk to us about what you've heard from them.
Yeah. So entrepreneurs were a part of my research as well. I am an entrepreneur. And so, the state of being a Black woman right now is, has been, cut first, funded last, the layoffs, that started in 2024, 2025 hit us the hardest, right? Programs were built for us back in 2020 when everybody was really excited about seeing Black women thrive. They have been quietly defunded. And we watched the most prepared women in the country meet a door that would not open, And so there's something about being shut out and the innovation that is created when you need to do something, right? So it's like the same pattern, the largest possible stage. And, they want leadership. They need our labor, our brilliance, and they can't discard the builders. And so it's just a lot of contradiction. And so Black women are the largest growing segment in entrepreneurship. They have been for over a decade, right? So it is not new, and we're adapting, and we are moving, and like they say, create a way out of no way.
We sure know that. As you say that, I'm thinking about the women in my family and the women in my work who are on brand with that, making a way out of no way. Um,
Absolutely.
Given everything that's happening politically just this year alone, you talked about 2020, you talked about 2025. I mean, it's 2026, July 2026, and it feels like in these past 7 months,
Mm.
almost 7 months, it feels like we've lived 7 years.
Yeah, it's
And
like dog years, right?
yeah, right. Especially considering not just the DEI rollbacks, but a number of our civil rights
Yeah.
being eroded. Talk to us about what courageous leadership demands of Black women specifically right now, because there's some people that say, we should be demanding a damn thing from Black
Right.
women in this moment. But you talk about courageous leadership in your book. What does that?
It just demands, staying steady, right? The environments are always going to be there to try to remind us that who matters and who does not. We have to cut it off. We have to not listen, right? It is hard. It's been hard these last, 7 months. Like you said, it feels like dog years. And we have been through harder things. We have been through tougher things, and we still rise in our genius. And we have to remind each other of that as well. We have to continue to support one another. We have to move in a way that we're just not thinking about it like, what is in it for me? Because that's not, the people in which we come, right? We're solving for the people who are most impacted because we know it benefits everyone. And so continuing to hold on to that, continuing to move through that, continuing to invest in yourself, right? Now, this is a time where we sort of paused and said, hey, we can't continue to give without getting anything back. So thinking about how we are refilling ourselves, how we are reinvesting, in ourselves, not just by circumstance, but really as a strategic choice, building that infrastructure that is required for us to be our best, even when people are not ready for us to.
Yeah, and speaking of building that infrastructure, I just want to zero in on the human infrastructure because
Mhm.
as you were talking, I couldn't help but think about solidarity
Oh,
with
yeah.
Black women. And your book obviously is speaking directly to Black women, but we know that there is a role that Black men, that Black families, that people of conscience play in supporting Black women. And so, what's your message, to folks who might be re-examining their solidarity politic in this?
Yeah, one, it's just like solidarity, not the surface level solidarity. Like we are in it together and then go back and live your lives as if it doesn't, as it doesn't matter, right? And so really this book serves three purposes. One, it's a power playbook for Black women, right? And a redesign manual for organizations. And it's a record of our leadership traditions. Like many people don't know our traditions. Again, Harriet Tubman, a mother figure, not a badass. And we know that she was, right? And so, um, there's just a lot of things that people, can do. So we're not talking to the people who are, right there with us, changing those systems as we lead to ensure that once we crack the door open, that or kick the door open, they're not closing it back. Once we shatter the ceiling, we leave it shattered, not trying to repair it.
Mm. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward with Dr. Kerry Mitchell Brown. She is the author of the forthcoming book, Revolutionary Leadership, a power playbook for Black women. She's also host of the Revolutionary Leadership podcast and an executive leadership strategist. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 15. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and I've really been enjoying this conversation with Dr. Kerry Mitchell Brown. She's an executive leadership strategist, host of the Revolutionary Leadership podcast, and she's also author of the fourth book, Revolutionary Leadership, a power playbook for Black. Dr. Brown, thank you again for being.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being in this conversation with you.
Yeah. Well, so I'm thinking about our leaders, learners, and listeners who are riding along with us in afternoon drive time at the and particularly for the young women like my niece
Mhm.
who are listening right now. who may be the only one in the room, what's one lesson from the book that my nieces and your niece and somebody's nieces out there can use?
Yeah, I mean, I talk to a lot of these young women. My daughter is a young woman as well, just sort of navigating. The thing that I do remind consistently is that we don't rise alone, that you rise connected. So even if you are the only one in the room, you have to build webs. So the women who thrive, they built webs, not ladders, right? And so just thinking and practicing, and a lot of young women now, they've grown up where it was just like, individual. I was the best at everything, and I was the top of my class, and very individualistic leadership. But that's not how things work. It will become very, very and isolating, and it's not liberating, right? And so just thinking through you know how do you build your one person, one men cannot do that. You need many professionals from your community, from your church, reach out and be sure to make sure it's reciprocal, right? And so not just reaching for a transaction, for a one thing to happen. I talk about friend raising quite a bit. We're very familiar with fundraising. Same concept. How do you continue in invest? What's sustainability look like? You're going to need friend raising along the way. People who will lift you up when you need to be lifted, will call you on your stuff when is necessary. But you have to, in a process with so that things are sustainable. If not, you will burn out quick.
I mean, that is some sage advice. You over here dropping gems. I love the concept, of webs building in so much ladders. Webs are more sustainable, to say the least. And I absolutely, the idea of not being afraid to lift one another up. Look, I got plenty of friends, ain't got no problem calling me, raising money for this and that and
Yes,
this.
yes.
But it is a total different proposition when it's just about lifting one another.
Mhm.
And, at a time like this, where we need more radical imagination, where we need more courage, we need to be lifting up those friends that are demonstrating that and more. Just as a follow up, I'm wondering, what distinction would you make based on your research in terms of how Black women lead versus how Black men?
Here's the thing. I use a very group specific application because Black women are amazing enough that we don't have to be compared to anyone, right? And again, if we are the benchmark, yeah, there's a lot analysis that I would do in the book that would say, well, this, not built for us, like these things happen, but we don't have that access. But I really don't compare Black women to anyone.
I take your point there.
Uh-huh.
But I'm not the first person to say or to observe that there are some Black women that, in terms of their leadership, people will attribute that to a more masculine presenting style of leadership versus what people sort of think of as a more sort of feminine, softer style of leadership. I want to give you an opportunity to sort that out for our leaders, learners, and listeners.
Yeah, because there was a leadership model, right, that said that these are the things that you do or that you should do without women in, without Black women in mind. And, Black women would, be very sure, be very clear and assertive. There are other things that come along with describing, who she is. And when there was care, when Black women did bring care, did bring humanity, did bring curiosity, it was dismissed as soft skills, right? And the interesting thing now is that's what we are teaching the men that we held up, that, was the foundation, of our leader, or at least, who people had in mind on what leadership should be. And so, yes, absolutely. There is a difference in the way they say that we lead between men and women, and across the racial as and there's no one model for sure, because that one model that we have been in schools, in company development program, we have the research that it doesn't work for us. And the research, the evidence is in when we think about how women are leading at the top of institutions, how many women are leading countries, especially ours in America. I mean, we just recently, went through that. They want the leadership we built, and they discard the builders. That's a contradiction in full.
Yeah. If you could hand every Fortune 500 CEO one page of this book, which page would you hand them, and why?
There is a chapter on measuring, right, and the measuring leadership, or measuring in a way that measures the way that most people sort of show up. One of my new findings in the book is that we're done measuring leadership by how much it costs us to, right? So they're saying, well, this person puts in so many hours, and they do long road trips, they have this massive amounts of work and accountability, but sustainability is not sacrifice. That's one of my newest findings in the book, and it's a shift. The work-life alignment, ranked among the strongest predictors of whether these women counted themselves successful, higher than a title, not higher than and community connection ranked right behind it. And so there's a lot of research and analysis in the book, what's required for leading, and also making this assertion that what organizations need now, we have already built and have been practicing it for generations.
Dr. Brown, I've got to what's a revolutionary leadership that you had to learn the hard way that you wish somebody else had told you?
Being, one of only in many rooms, you have potential to be set up or trapped in this or the savior, right? And so just learning, over time that I can create another option, and that's redesign. And that's, the beginning of organizational transformation work. And so, I mean, I think that is pretty powerful, because we're still in situations where we are one of only, or one of a few. And I'm just really excited about the analysis around it. And even I talk about it on my podcast. That was the first episode. It's the revolutionary part is avoiding the trap and creating something.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I think there's a clip that's gone viral of Oprah Winfrey, the Cannes Lion festival in France, where I guess she was asked a question during an interview about imposter syndrome, right? And I think imposter syndrome, I think it's a strange, I understand what it is, a little strange to me, but Oprah was sort of leaning into that question, and she might have surprised some folks, saying that she's never suffered imposter syndrome because she never had this idea that she didn't belong there. And I'm summarizing it, but she said essentially, God blessed her to be in, certain rooms or in certain, she didn't question that, she believed that she was exactly where she needed to be. And even more than that, she believed that she wasn't alone. She's very conscious of standing on the of our ancestors.
Absolutely.
Right. And so, that classic quote from Maya Angelou's poem, where she says, I come as one, but I stand as 10.
Yes.
Did that viral clip of Oprah, did that also resonate with, what does it echo from, your book on revolutionary leadership?
Absolutely. It did resonate with me, because I hold quite often, and I often, in my coaching practice, is to women, everything that you've done up to this point is preparing you for what's next. And we don't know like what next is going to always be. And yes, it could be a little lonely, and isolating. I didn't suffer from imposter syndrome, either. And there's a lot of research and talk, if it's a thing, if it's not a thing. But if it wasn't intended for me, then I wouldn't be there. So how do I mess it up? Like, how do I make it count for whatever is next? Now, there have been times where I had to evaluate, did it cost me more to be here than the benefit, and then figure out my exit strategy and pivot. But that wasn't imposter syndrome. That was everything about the system. And it's very easy for us to adopt that it's me, personally, not that this is a system that was not designed for my success.
Mm, mm. In our remaining minute with you, Dr. Brown, what do you want readers to feel, not just know, but what you want them to feel by the time they close?
I want them to feel seen. I want them to feel that they have tools like at their fingertips. In the book, there are some questions after the end of every chapter. They're full of frameworks, blueprints, and there is something in there for somebody. There's more than just something. There's a lot in there for anyone who wants to dig in, whether you're a Black woman leader, you are changing the conditions for Black women to lead without exhausting and costing more than we're receiving.
I mean, it really sounds like this book is so incredibly timely. I mean, here we are sitting at basically the 50-yard line in the year 2020, and it seems to me for folks that may want to finish the year, this book is a good investment. It's a good investment of your time, of your talent, of your and I really want to encourage people to go out and pick it up. But Dr. Brown, you wanted to.
No, I was just going to say it's a source. People can learn from the source, and we're always looking for ways to lead, and that's why it.
Dr. Kerry Mitchell Brown, author of Revolutionary Leadership, a power playbook for Black. Where can people go to follow you and pre-order the book?
Okay, Revolutionary Leadership, a power playbook for Black women, launches August the 4th. Pre-orders are available now. You can find it and me at revolutionarylead.com.
Our thanks to Dr. Kerry Mitchell Brown. Godspeed, and thank you for your work and your witness.
Oh, thank you so much for this powerful conversation.